In this video, we're going to look at drum editing. We're going to look at all our takes and see how we can get them to fit cohesively across the track. And then I'll show you how I would edit the toms so we can clean up any dead noise between tom hits. That's always quite an important part. Okay, so once we've recorded some takes of drums, you'll have something that looks like this. Now, I've used a feature on this in Pro Tools called playlist mode. So what that means is you can record on your tracks as you normally would in the tracking video. And then once you've got them, as long as you've got your tracks grouped, which I have in this case down here, you can click on these arrows and it can take you to different takes that you've done in the song. So there might be bit parts like these where you've dropped in and anything like that. And you can flick between different takes and you know, you see which you think is going to be best. Now, I've just gone through and found what I think are probably some of the best parts, which are on, I think it's this one. So you can see what I've done just to start the ball rolling with editing. I've taken out all the sound at the beginning because there's nothing there, but you might always sometimes get a little bit of a shuffle or a little bit of a stick click before the song actually starts, which can be a little bit off-putting sometimes, so I like to clean that sort of thing out. And then you'll see what I've done here. I've just got a little fade. Now, to make a fade, literally just highlight the area, and it's Command F if you're on a Apple Mac, and then you just hit OK, and that will put in a little fade so that you don't get any click or pop or anything once that audio starts. So that sounds like this. So obviously everything's still fairly dry at the moment. But then you'll see I've cut in another part here. So this is from a different take. But then you'll notice you might not be able to hear. If you're listening on headphones, you may hear this, but there's a tiny, tiny little pop when you go across this little split here. Something on the left. So the way to combat that is to go through any edits that you've got. I try to neaten them up so that they are normally just before a transient. And what I mean by transient is just where you see this line here for the kick or this one here for the snare drum. If you get that just before, you don't want to do a fade that's right on a transient because that will definitely give you some issues. But if you get it close to one and then you just highlight the area between the two, Command F again, and that will put in a crossfade. And that will take away any click, pop, or any sort of strange artifacts that you might get. Yeah. So the idea is to go through the song and do that. It depending how many takes you've got or how many edits you've got in there, it could take you anywhere from 5 minutes to a couple of hours if you're doing some really serious editing. So we've gone through already to try and get the best parts of all of Matt's takes to make one sort of main drum take. And that's what's referred to as comping, so it's drum comping. And it really just is a compilation of everything you've done, and you make it so it all fits well. Now, there are a couple of punch-ins on here as well, as I demonstrated in the tracking video. So we will have dropped in just for one little drum fill or one sort of verse section or something like that. But that's all there, and once you've got it all edited, it should get rid of any clicks and pops and things like that. You can go one step further. There are options and tools in Pro Tools called Elastic Audio and Beat Detective. They're two different processes, where what that can do, it can analyze your waveforms and it can put in edit points. Now, there can be edit points where it will cut the audio and move it to where it thinks it should be. You can get some good results with that. Elastic Audio, on the other hand, that's Beat Detective I was just talking about, but Elastic Audio will put in edit points and then it can stretch the audio, and it has a particular algorithm that it uses to do it. Now, if you're doing tiny adjustments, it can work quite well. The same with Beat Detective, but if your drummer's a million miles away, it can be quite noticeable. And some of the issues you get with that, you can get artifacts in there, so you might get clicks, pops. It might sound like it's got reverb on it when it hasn't, or it can just make your cymbal sound a little bit trashy at times as well. So the idea is try and get the best performance you can. I mean, we've spent a couple of hours doing drum takes. You know, we're using a well-tuned drum kit in a reasonable size room. Obviously, it's not, like I said earlier, it's not a traditional studio. It's more of like a converted office kind of space. But there's fresh drum skins on. Matt knows the song. It's a song the band have been playing for a long time. It's just not yet been recorded. So the idea is get the best you can, get the highest standards. The more prepared that you are and the higher standard you hold for yourself, it will help you get a better result, in my opinion. Okay, so the last part about editing, just to mention, once you've gone through and done all your edits, you'll often find, particularly with toms, you have a lot of ring or a lot of background noise going on, which will sound something like this. Now, we obviously don't need all that in there. And when you mute them, it can help to clean up the overall drum sound. So one thing that I like to do with toms, let's take this floor tom hit here, for example. So we can see at the top we've not got any tom hits in this part. So we can trim all that stuff out. And you can go through each track and do it this way. I like to keep the floor tom hit that's there. And then you've got a nice clean little sample, but obviously you've got a little ring on the end of that. So what we can do, we can, like we did at the beginning of the drum track, we can fade that in. But then you hear there is a kick sample here, a kick sound just cutting through as well. So the way to not get rid of it fully, because once it's in the mix you'll not notice that quite so much, but you can see there's a tiny little change in the waveform here, and the way I like to get rid of these is I'll create a little cut here using Command and E, and then I take what's left of this part. Now we're just focusing on just trying to cut some of that cymbal sound out. So in Pro Tools we have an option called Audio Suite, and in there I like to use this plugin to basically help cut any cymbal ring out. Now the way it works with Audio Suite is you highlight a region of audio like I have done here, and then you can process that straight away. So it doesn't add the plugin on taking up processing power, it will record it back to that track through that plugin. You basically render it down. So if we listen to how that sounds, we're basically rolling off all the high end. If we turn that off, we'll hear all that come back in. So the idea is to put that at a point it's not too noticeable. You want to feel the low end of it still. So we'll try that, we'll render that. So now what happens when we play this part? So compared to originally when it sounded like this, it now sounds like this. So it's still got some of the low end there, but it keeps it nice and in check. Again, I would crossfade this just because it has then become a separate piece of audio, so it could create some clicks. Again, the biggest thing we've got there is the snare, but what we could do, we could fade that out before that point. So like we put a fade in the beginning of that clip, we can put a second one in there. And that helps just clean up your tom tracks. Cleaning up tom tracks in this way is something I tend to do on every single mix or every single drum recording. It helps just keep everything clean and clear, and you don't get too many overtones or any ringing coming through the rest of the mix at that point. So it should play quite nice. Yeah, so I tend to do that throughout the whole track. So that was a quick look at editing. In the next video, we're going to be looking at sampling.